Where's Blake? We right, Blake? Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon, and I formally declare open this council meeting of Colac Otway Shire Council on the 26th of April 2023. I'll commence with the opening prayer. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of the Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. Amen. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. Please be advised that this council meeting is recorded and live streamed, with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of the meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open council meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal or sensitive information. Just before I go on, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the Colac Otway Shire and the community the recent passing of Peter Mercer, who was an active local member of our community, and he was councillor at Colac Otway Shire from 1996 to 2008. Peter served as mayor from 2000 to 2001 and then 2002 to 2003. We'd like to pass on our condolences to Peter's family and friends. And Councillor Hart, would you like to say something in acknowledgement of Peter?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor. When I was first elected in 2002, Peter was a councillor for what was then the Murray ward of Colac Otway Shire. He'd been a Colac Otway Shire councillor continuously since councillors were elected for Colac Otway from 1996 after the amalgamations in 1994. Of course, he'd also served on council before amalgamations, but that was before my time. In 2002, councillors, all of us, supported Peter Mercer to be mayor, and he had been mayor previously. And on being elected as mayor, Peter made the comment that he regarded himself among equals, and that's how he conducted himself, supporting other councillors in the role. Peter was also Colac Otway Shire's representative on the Corangamite Regional Library Board and the Barwon Regional Waste Management Board for many years. The library service was a partnership between Colac Otway and the shires to the west, to Warrnambool. The Waste Management Board covered the area from Geelong to Colac Otway. After Peter Mercer's retirement from council in 2008, I was appointed by the council as a representative on the Library Board and the Waste Management Board. And in those roles, I heard from councillors from other municipalities who had worked with Peter on the Library or the Waste Management Board. And of particular note was the high regard with which he was held by councillors from other municipalities, both west from Colac and east from Colac. And so I'd like to join with you in offering our condolences to Peter's families and friends.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Very nice words, Stephen, and we all echo those. I note that all 7 councillors are present, so there's no apologies. Moving on to question time. Colac Otway Shire Council encourages community input, and integral to this is the opportunity provided to ask questions at council meetings. A maximum of 30 minutes is allowed for question time at council meetings. I've received questions in writing from James Judd, Paul Schroeder, Jacinta Tobin, Tim Cobb, Graham Hill, John Mariner, David Walsh, Tim Godfrey and Neil Longmore. The majority of these questions will be read out and a response will be provided by the relevant member of the Executive Management Team. In accordance with Sub-Rule 56.6.3 of Council's Governance Rules, an individual written response will only be provided to questions that have not been read out today. All written responses will be available in the minutes on the Colac Otway Shire website once confirmed at the following council meeting. We've quite a lot of questions ahead of us, so before I can move on, can I have a show of hands of those people who might want to ask questions from the floor? Thank you. So to ensure that each member of the gallery has an opportunity to ask questions, it may be necessary to allow only a maximum of 2 questions each. We'll play that by ear. There are a lot of written questions. If necessary, I'm happy to extend question time by a little bit to try and give everyone the opportunity to be heard. No, we are discussing the community infrastructure plan today. A lot of the written questions relate to that plan. So if you are planning on asking a question verbally, which you're entitled to, but I just urge you to listen to the read out questions and answers, which may in fact address what you might want to ask. First question is from Mr. Paul Schroeder. Would the Council update the Colac community on the status of the Colac Tourist Information Centre? I've expressed an interest in volunteering at the centre in 2022 and have no contact on the centre's future. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, Council has commenced the Colac Visitor Service Review, which aims to identify a visitor servicing model for Colac that is sustainable and maximises the dissemination of information to visitors to increase visitor spend, length of stay and seasonal geographical dispersal. Over coming months, targeted consultation will occur, including with private industry and service delivery partners, to inform the service review.
Thank you. Questions from James Judd. Question 1. Has the Colac Otway Shire Council done anything definite to make sure the Colac 2050 growth plan can be introduced on time? No more we... Thank you. No one couldn't hear me. I'll reread that question. Has the Colac Otway Shire Council done anything definite to make sure the Colac 2050 growth plan can be introduced on time? No more we plan for subdivisions that mean nothing until actually provided and available to be used. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, Council continues to implement the Colac 2050 growth plan. It firstly amended the planning scheme to formally recognise the new urban growth boundaries for Colac and is now preparing the Deans Creek Precinct Structure Plan to support rezoning of the land in the western part of Colac and Elimini as a priority project. The Victorian Government is also currently considering 2 planning scheme amendments for land in Elimini as identified in the Colac 2050 growth plan.
Thank you. Question 2. Has the Colac Otway Shire Council any emergency plans about how it could deal with human waste if the septic and sewage systems failed to operate? Many can still remember when these systems were very limited. Plus, it is under 40 years since some of urban Melbourne, created in the extension of the metropolitan area in the late 1940s, was connected to the sewage system. Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Barwon Water has responsibility for the reticulated sewage treatment systems and has its own plans and strategies for responding to risks associated with its infrastructure and sewage service. Septic systems are the responsibility of individual landowners, with Council having an approval and monitoring role. Council has broad emergency management responsibilities, which it would exercise in partnership with Barwon Water, the Environment Protection Authority and the Victorian State Government Department of Health in the case of an event where a failure of a sewage network resulted in the need for a public health response.
Thank you. Question 3. In the rush to grow the population of urban Colac and the rush to create small building allotments, did the Colac Otway Shire Council ever consider that the sewage system could be too small to handle the increased demand on it? Plus, small allotments are far too small to allow for a genuine septic tank to be used, as no area exists for effluent to be discharged on site. Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Barwon Water is the referral agency for all subdivisions, which provides the opportunity to assess and comment on the capacity of the sewage system to accommodate population growth. In the planning for Colac over recent years, including the Colac 2050 growth plan, Council staff have consulted Barwon Water on many occasions to ensure that both current and proposed development of urban areas can occur within the capacity of the reticulated sewage system, and that such development can be connected to the sewage network. It is through this collaboration that Barwon Water schedules upgrades to its pipe network, pumping stations and treatment facility that accords with the emerging development patterns.
Thank you. Question 4. Is it the intention of the Colac Otway Shire Council to extend the centre strip on Murray Street Colac down to Armstrong Street Colac that this council gave notice about some years ago? Plus, if to go ahead, is at any time yet known about when it will be done? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Council adopted the Colac 20 CBD and entrances strategy in 2012, which identifies an upgrade to Murray Street from Queen Street to Armstrong Street. The first stage of the upgrade to Murray Street was completed a number of years ago. The next stage seeks to improve Murray Street from Corangamite Street to Armstrong Street, which includes the construction of a central median. The project was identified as a priority of the strategy, however, would cost many millions of dollars and rely heavily on funding from other levels of government. Council has advocated to government various times since the first stage of the Murray Street redevelopment was completed. However, is yet to attract funding to complete the next stage of the project.
Thank you. A question from Jacinda Tobin. Dear Mayor and Councillors, the current draft infrastructure plan, in brackets Polar Bay, Skeens and Marengo, even with new amendments as considered by council officers, lacks depth and vital infrastructure such as drainage, sewerage, housing and adequate paths. Point Bunbury, Town to Harbour. NBN, infrastructure for e-transport, provision for electrification of town, childcare, VBOS, long-term for skate park. It denies a voice for residents as opposed to tourists, imposing desktop authority whims, e.g. foreshore and opinion on skate park versus parking for tourist buses. A, can it be rejected in current form until funding is secured to actually do something positive? B, can the Apollo Bay infrastructure plan with amendments be rejected due to tourism, not resident focus? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Council will be considering whether to adopt the Apollo Bay, Skeens Creek and Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan at its meeting today. The final plan for consideration is the culmination of many years of work and significant engagement, including an initial phase of community consultation between April and July 2019, and the consultation report is still available on our website. The exhibition of an Issues and Opportunities report in November 2019, multiple engagement sessions including in-person open house sessions, online engagements and targeted interviews, community feedback on the draft CIP when exhibited, which included council hearing directly from submitters at a meeting held in Apollo Bay in late 2022. If adopted, the plan will provide guidance to both council and the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority concerning a wide range of issues, including traffic management on the Great Ocean Road, car parking, streetscape improvements for the central business area of Apollo Bay, parking for coaches and tourist buses, and improvements to foreshore areas. While other authorities such as Barwon Water, NBNco and Powercore will have their own strategic planning for infrastructure, the CIP will be able to inform all key stakeholders. The plan aims to improve facilities for both visitors and local residents alike.
Thank you. Question 2. According to early childhood education standards, the quality of education best provided in integrated centre of kindergarten, child health nurse and education. Apollo Bay, renowned as a childcare desert with more than 30 families unable to access enough childcare to participate in meaningful work, had plans for integrated centre but appears to have stalled. Being born in regional Australia shouldn't disadvantage any child. Every child, regardless of where they live, should be able to access high quality education. When will COS get on with the AB Centre? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Childcare is an important service which supports local workforce participation whilst also providing benefits for children. The current childcare provider in Apollo Bay continues to provide a valuable service for the community. Council does not currently provide childcare services. However, in recognising the importance of a sustainable childcare service in Apollo Bay, Council, in partnership with Great Ocean Road Health, continues to advocate to the Victorian Government for support through its Best Start, Best Life policy reform to provide state-run childcare in Apollo Bay.
Thank you. A question from Mr Tim Cobb. The Skeens Creek community were delighted by the unanimous resolution by councillors last month to support our Apollo Bay Skeens Creek community in delivering a safe link between our towns for pedestrians and cyclists. A, will you please provide a detailed list of the specific environmental concerns identified during the Apollo Bay Skeens Creek Trail project, which government states could have long-term impacts on the coastal environment? Future work to provide a safe link between Apollo Bay and Skeens Creek will need to address these concerns, so it's critical to know what exactly they are rather than rely on a vague statement. And B, will you also please supply copies of the reports produced during the project so that the community can hold a copy on file to be available for any future work? Response from the CEO, Anne Howard.
Thank you, Mr Cobb. We do understand the community's interest in the detailed work that has been undertaken over recent years. We've been asked on a number of occasions now if Council is able to release the documents in full. Those documents that have been developed over recent years to help try and understand and progress the trail as it was planned. As we've previously advised, Council's not in a position to publicly release the documents without the explicit approval of the funding bodies who have paid for them, and we do not have that at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Question 2. CIP and Apollo Bay Foreshore Trail to Harbour. The community has consistently advocated for a trail linking the skate park to the harbour along the foreshore for about 30 years. Government departments, authorities, rules and interpretations change with bewildering regularity, and who knows what their opinion will be in place when a trail is eventually built. Following a late submission by government, in brackets DECA, Council has removed this path from the plan and replaced it by a path along the beach. We all know a beach path will be impassable at high tide. Gorkappa's new fences in this area have all been washed away within days. A, will the CIP retain the trail shown between the harbour and the skate park desired by the community for many years and put out for consultation? B, why has Council dropped the community-supported route in a 30-year plan based on a current transitory 2023 government opinion that a potential future proposal may not be approved at some future point in time? Council could keep DECA happy by including a note in an appendix that this alignment is not currently supported by DECA and would need to comply with relevant legislation at the time of construction. And C, if the Council want to make this material change to the CIP that went out to consultation, doesn't this issue have to go out for consultation again? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. The Apollo Bay Skeens Creek Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan is presented to Council for consideration at today's meeting and is not for officers to make a comment on what that decision may be. Gorkappa and DECA advise that the Marine and Coastal Policy 2020 does not support development on coastal dunes and therefore a constructed pathway in this location would not gain coastal consent. This is why it isn't included in the body of the CIP, which details infrastructure that has shared support by Council and Gorkappa and is deemed to be feasible. The benefits of a proposed trail are recognised by Council officers and therefore included in the appendices to the document presented today. However, we also recognise there are major challenges to its feasibility. Council hopes that the authority and DECA are able to undertake further investigation about the feasibility of a trail or connection in consultation with Council and the community. Councils and other agencies often exhibit documents seeking community feedback, which we appreciate and consider. However, there are many inputs into finalising such documents right up until the final point the documents are approved. There are numerous changes proposed to the Community Infrastructure Plan following the public exhibition process and further engagement with stakeholders. Officers believe these are generally already known to the community and further consultation is not considered necessary.
Thank you. Question 3, Marengo Beacon. In response to considerable feedback from the community in February 2022, Council committed to restoring the historic Marengo Beacon. Who at Colac Otway Shire is taking responsibility for implementing this resolution? What progress has been made in the past 12 months? And when does Council expect to deliver on its commitment to the community to restore the beacon? General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Reinstatement of the Marengo Beacon requires agreement with the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority, as it will be sited on land that the authority will manage and it will become its asset to manage and look after. Officers have had a number of discussions with the authority over the past 12 months, as well as the Historical Society regarding the former beacon. Through the discussions to date, officers have been informed that the reinstatement of the beacon requires consideration under the Marine and Coastal Act 2018, and we are seeking to understand how to satisfy the policy requirements.
Thank you. Question 4. Late DECA CIP submission to CIP. Who gives authority under what rules for DECA to make a new submission to the CIP months after submissions are closed to everyone else? Isn't that submission inadmissible? Will their submission be published or is it secret? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, it has been Council's practice to accept submissions from community members or other stakeholders up until it makes a decision on a matter, whether that is a planning application or its own community corporate documents. This is not a new practice and it is up to councillors to decide how they wish to consider the submission. Council will need agreement from DECA to make their submission available to the public, and we have asked them about this already.
Thank you. Question from Graham Hill. Question 1, skate park playground. Will Council be absolutely clear about the community's need to retain the skate park and playground in their current location? There is no other viable location for such facilities. The point being that the green space on the foreshore should be considered community space under CRSC and not Gore Kappa. It's too late to change these boundaries now, but the green space is the only community space we have, in brackets for market, festivals, fireworks, celebrations, etc. It's imperative that this green space is a shared responsibility between Gore Kappa and Colac Otway Shire Council. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, the Apollo Bay Skeens Creek Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan presented to Council for consideration at today's meeting details the community's views on the retention of the Apollo Bay Skate Park on the foreshore. It is highly valued by the community and is conveniently sited in a highly visible and accessible location. Officers propose that Council confirm a position that the skate park be retained in its current location on the foreshore and maintained or redeveloped as required.
Thank you. Question 2, Point Bunbury Pathway. How will Council ensure that the planned revised routing for the Point Bunbury Pathway, adjacent to the Golf Club Practice Fairway, is implemented in good faith and is correctly designated so in the CIP? It's essential that Gore Kappa is given clear instructions about the implementation of this revised routing in the CIP, as overwhelmingly supported by the community. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, Council is aware that the community and the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority are still working through the future of the Point Bunbury Path, and we look forward to it being resolved.
Question 3, will Council make it absolutely clear that the desire of the community is for a direct path or boardwalk over or alongside the dunes designated as Mother's Beach? The dunes are relatively recent, merely 50 years old, and have only accumulated because of tidal action around the harbour. Tidal variations have seen in recent months erosion of those dunes to the point where serious work is going to have to take place to reduce or remove the danger to the public. Will Council make it clear that a boardwalk over the dunes is preferred, but revetments and promenade walkways similar to the rest of Apollo Bay would be satisfactory? Mr Hill writes that the erosion of the sand dunes above Mother's Beach is now at a critical stage, and revetments and promenade walk would solve both issues, namely the provision of a walkway and stopping the erosion. It is grossly unfair for DECA to seek to intervene in a public consultation of the CIP by requesting that the walkway be removed from the CIP because DECA wouldn't approve it anyway. Revetments and promenade walk have been accepted by DECA/Gore Kappa and the Marine and Coastal Act along the rest of the Apollo Bay foreshore. There surely can be no argument that such construction couldn't or wouldn't be acceptable for the Mother's Beach section of the foreshore. Will Council make it absolutely clear once and for all that the community requires a walkway directly from the town to the harbour as a generation-defining piece of infrastructure, something that has been talked about for 50 years? To date, the Apollo Bay Golf Club has paid some $100,000 towards this walkway and still has not been implemented. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, As per an earlier response, these are matters that will be resolved through final consideration of the Apollo Bay Skeens Creek Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan at today's meeting, and is not for officers to make a comment on what that decision may be.
Thank you. Question 4, long vehicle parking on Trafalgar Street. Will Council remove the provision for long vehicle parking in Trafalgar Street as I requested previously? Mr Hill provides a bit of information in relation to that. And will Council take out or reduce the conventional car parking from the Harbour car park and make room for more long vehicle parking there? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Mr Hill, for the question. I'm sure councillors will keep your views in mind as they consider the final Apollo Bay Skeens Creek Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan at today's meeting.
Thank you. Question 5. Will Council make it clear that the community insists on this essential long-term piece of community infrastructure and show it in the plan is referring to the Skeens Creek path stroke cycleway? The recent decision to divert funds from Skeens Creek to Point Grey Lawn is an unfortunate one, but it does not mean that the community gives up on the Skeens Creek path cycleway. We need it to tie all of our coastal community together, and it should remain an aspiration. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Council acknowledges the ongoing community priority for a pedestrian bicycle pathway connection between Skeens Creek and Apollo Bay, which was further recognised at the March 2023 Council meeting. Officers have included wording in the final community infrastructure plan being considered today that identifies the need for investigation of other path options.
Thank you. Question 6, Harbour and Golf Club car park toilets. Will Council please clarify the destiny of the Harbour car park toilets? These are an essential public service for boaters, fisher people, sailing club and harbour beach patrons. It's important that the recent confusion around the studies and the removal of these toilets should be clarified and the toilets designated in the plan, even if the exact location is not yet settled. Likewise, will Council Gorkappa clarify in the CIP the destiny of the golf club car park toilets? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. It is proposed in the Community Infrastructure Plan that consideration be given to consolidation of the current golf club car park public toilets with the clubhouse itself at some future time. This would allow removal of the current ageing toilets and the redesign of the car parking area. The plan does not specify the timeline for delivery of any particular proposal. Delivery of projects will be based on a range of factors over time, including age of the asset, community need and available funds. The Apollo Bay Harbour development approved by Council in 2020 indicates the preferred location of public toilets within the harbour precinct, although it is acknowledged that the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority will be undertaking a review of that plan in the short term, which will clarify the future of toilet provision.
Thank you. Question from John Mariner. I've had a long association with the Apollo Bay Harbour and with trail building, including along the Great Ocean Walk. I recall the 1991 foreshore plan prepared by the Department of Sustainability and Environment included mention of a trail between the central foreshore and the harbour. This trail was proposed along the golf club boundary, that is, behind the dune that has continued to grow ever since the harbour was constructed. The dune has continued to build up higher and higher over an area that was underwater due to dredging of sand from the harbour and the introduction of marram grass and coastal tea tree. I'm asking if this alignment for pedestrian along the golf club boundary between the foreshore and the harbour has been considered in the community infrastructure plan, as it could be easily constructed in a location not threatened by erosion, in fact quite the opposite, and would not impact any vegetation native to the area or indigenous artefacts. Response from the General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. As noted in an answer to an earlier question, Council has considered the potential for locating a pedestrian link between the foreshore of Apollo Bay and the harbour along the edge of the dune and the golf club. DECA has indicated it does not consider this link would be consistent with the Marine and Coastal Policy 2020 and would not obtain consent. Officers have recommended that Council express its preference in an appendix to the plan that further investigation into the feasibility of a trail connection at this location occur.
Thank you. Question from Mr David Walsh. As council are aware, with the continuing development in the area south of Airy Street and the pressures put on the stormwater system down Main Street Eliminite into Airy Street and the more frequent rain events we seem to have, therefore my question to council is, can funding for an underground drainage system for Airy Street be put in this year's upcoming budget? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. In 2019, Council adopted the Colac Stormwater Development Strategy. This strategy proposes a range of stormwater treatment options to mitigate flooding and to allow development through the Deans Creek corridor, including the area in Airy Street you are referring to. Council has commenced and will be progressing work on the Deans Creek Precinct Structure Plan through 2023-2024. The Precinct Structure Plan will be informed by a number of key studies including flora and fauna, heritage, land capability and hydrology. This will be the first step in identifying how large-scale development can occur in this growth corridor. All large-scale development in this corridor will be supported by enabling infrastructure such as the stormwater elements or similar identified in the referred strategy. In the shorter term, Council will be delivering the Eliminite Wetlands Project in 24-25. This project will formalise and significantly improve the storage capacity on the corner of Armstrong Street and Irrawillipy Road. This project will help retard flows from upstream catchments, providing more capacity in the system immediately downstream during flood events, including on Airy Street. No other significant drainage works are proposed in the draft 23-24 budget.
Thank you. Question from Tim Godbury. There are a number of entities involved in the reconstruction of the Marengo Beacon, and there have been suggestions to change the original design, purpose and location of the beacon. In view of our community's desire to retain the integrity of the original structure, can Council please amend the proposed motion to read in part, reinstate the Marengo Pillar Beacon to its original design and purpose? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Notices of motion will be considered by councillors later today.
Question 2. The Great Ocean Road and Environment Protection Act 2020, Section 16 states, the heritage of the Great Ocean Road and post-European settlement communities should be recognised, protected and promoted. Given the significance of the beacon to the heritage of our community and the respect we hold for our early mariners and settlers, how does Council intend to proceed with this matter in view of the recent native title determination of the land and a public meeting last week expressing discontent with Gorkappa? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. The former Marengo Beacon was located on land managed by the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority. Any works on this land is subject to approvals under the Marine and Coastal Act. The Marine and Coastal Act policy is a strong mechanism to ensure the protection of the Victorian coastline. It also supports the protection of intangible and tangible cultural values. The following points below are in consideration of native title announced for Eastern Mar. To reinstall the beacon, the rights, assertions and knowledge of the traditional owners, Eastern Mar Aboriginal Corporation, are considered. The MACA policy strongly emphasises traditional owners care for and respect country through self-determination, and land managers are required to facilitate this. Therefore, EMAC must be involved in any discussions to reinstate the beacon. A MACA consent application would need to be approved by the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, and DECA would require robust reasoning for reinstalling the beacon.
Thank you. Question from Neil Longmore. Question 1. Draft Coastal Infrastructure Plan. Given that DECA is the ultimate decision maker for coastal Crown land in Colac Otway Shire and that the Apollo Bay area faces an escalating range of coastal hazards, not just erosion, in the 30-year planning horizon of the CIP, what are the implications for the draft plan of the DECA submission in February 2023 that the draft CIP is not based on the most up-to-date coastal hazard information? Response please from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Council confirms that the best available coastal hazards data at the time of writing the report was used to inform the draft CIP, which has been communicated to DECA. The CIP includes guiding principle 2, create a sustainable and robust environment that can adapt to environmental change over time. It notes under Principle 2 that the CIP has considered the best available data to ensure the process is responsive to climate change pressures. However, given the lifespan of the CIP, prior to the implementation of individual actions, further investigations will be undertaken to ensure the actions remain appropriate and continue to align with Principle 2.
Thank you. That concludes our written questions, and as I said earlier, that has eaten up our normal amount of time allocated for question time, but I'm happy to take some questions from the gallery. Can I remind everyone that it's for questions, it's not a forum for public debate or statements, and when asking a question, can you please state your full name for the minutes, please? So, show of hands again. Mr Weber, you're in the front there, we'll take you first.
Tony Webber, Otway Forum. We recently ran the Otway and Apollo Bay show, and we were required for the first time to have a pope from the Shire, which is permission to run an event. Now, it caused us a lot of trouble, and we also had to get permission from Gore Kappa to run the show, and they didn't give it until about a month before show day. So I'd like to know, and the show committee would like to know, if we do require to have a pope for every show, which we've never had before, and we've been running shows since 1954.
Mr Chasewell, will you take this one?
I do believe that a pope will be required for the show.
So why haven't we had to have one before?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Right. All right. The second question is about the Skeens Creek to Wild Dog Walk and bicycle track. Years ago, a number of us made submissions that the track should be on the land side of the Ocean Road to avoid erosion and sea level rise. Will that be considered again?
Through the Mayor, thanks very much, Mr Webber. I would think that there's a number of scenarios that now need to be explored again. Perhaps things that have been put aside in the past need to be revisited. I can't say exactly what they'll be, but I would think we need to cast a fairly broad net.
Right. Now, Mr Judd has written a question. He's asked me to ask the council. It's quite detailed, but the basis of the question is, will there be enough time for the budgetary process to receive submissions by the due date on the 1st of July? He is quite concerned that it's not processing fast enough.
So thank you for the opportunity to talk about the draft budget and the process. It's always very exciting for us to get into this time of year. At this stage, Council will consider a draft budget for adoption, for endorsement for public exhibition next Wednesday. So tune into that. That'll be a great discussion. So we hope to then get a lot of interest from our community. We've got 4 weeks available for public submissions, and then the Council will also, as is standard practice, make sure there's an opportunity for people to speak directly to Council about their submissions. So we expect to have the draft budget endorsed next Wednesday, all going well. 4 weeks for submissions. They'll close at the very start of June, I think. And then on the 14th of June, we're planning to hear submissions. Council will hear submissions, those who want to speak to them, with the adoption before the end of June.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Webber. Jane, did you have a question?
Thank you. Jane Gross, permanent resident of Apollo Bay. I've just got a really simple question, and it is just that, is there some way that Council can assist community groups by negotiating with Gore Kappa to simplify what seems to be a rigorous procedure that they seem to require to use the foreshore or the beach for events or classes such as festivals, Clean Up Australia Day or yoga classes?
Mr Siren.
Through you, Mayor, thanks for the question, Jane. Not aware of the specifics around their process, but more than happy to speak to Gore Kappa about what that is, to see what role we can provide to community groups to assist them.
Yeah, it's many, many pages they have to fill out, and it's been really taxing for people. So
Sure.
should people contact you about that? or-
Happy for people to contact me in the first instance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. There was a hand up from down the back somewhere.
Okay, hello, my name is Catherine Ford. My question is in relation to the Environment Strategy Plan that Council is currently developing. How will agriculture be affected in this Shire? Will there be any consultation with farmers? There's a lot of emphasis and talk on climate action plans and zero emissions.
Mr McNair, will you take this?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question. The environment strategy that Council is currently preparing, and we hope to come before Council in the next couple of months, has looked at issues like the impact of climate change on agriculture. Council did a very significant engagement with the community last year with a range of community members and stakeholders, and that included talking about agricultural issues as part of that discussion. So when the draft strategy is presented to Council, and the draft climate action plan at the same time, there will be some references to actions that Council might take in the future on that topic.
Okay, and do you not believe it's hypocritical from a Council's point of view to potentially charge farmers for carbon produced when there should be a credit given for farmers sequestering carbon in the soil?
Do you want this one as well, Doug?
Yes, sorry, can you just repeat the question again for me?
Do you not believe it's hypocritical from a Council's point of view to potentially charge farmers for carbon produced when really there should be a credit given for farmers sequestering carbon in the soil?
Yeah, thank you. Look, that question is not one that Council can answer. Carbon pricing is something that's more at the federal government level, and Council doesn't have any role in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question down the back? Oh, Yvonne, yep. Yeah, it's you, Yvonne.
Thank you, Mayor Potter. When and how does Council plan to meet with the Apollo Bay Residents Action Group, as yet unnamed, formed recently by 200 residents at the Mechanics Hall and reported by the Colac Herald, to attend to infrastructure matters like decent rubbish bins and the need for more pedestrian crossings as outlined in the CIP on the agenda, not to mention the collapse of the Great Ocean Road at the intersection with Moore Street on Christmas Eve last, and the terrible incident more recently when a sand dune actually collapsed and nearly suffocated a child near the harbour.
Thanks for the question. Look, I think Council and councillors are looking forward to meeting with this group once they've finalised their structure and the committee. I think my personal view is it's a good thing for Apollo Bay to have this group formed.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Yvonne. Anybody else have any questions? All right, thanks everybody. That concludes question time. I note there's no petitions or joint letters. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest from anyone, please? No, thank you. Councillors, I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Wednesday the 29th of March 2023. Could I have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Hart. Seconder, Councillor Arnott. Is it to be opposed? I'll just put it to the vote. You didn't want to say anything, Councillor Hart? Yeah. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried 7-0. We'll now move on to officer reports. The first item 9.1, Apollo Bay, Skeens Creek and Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan, considerations of submissions. Sorry, Councillor Costin.
Mayor, I'd like to flag, I've got an alternative motion for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, duly noted. The purpose of this report is to consider submissions to the draft Apollo Bay, Skeens Creek and Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan and recommend that Council adopt the plan subject to changes recommended in this report and the attached appendices. Are there any councillors of office, questions of officers, councillors? No questions? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got an amended motion showing up on the screen here. It's a little lengthy, but I think it's what we need to decide to show our opinion on a number of things in the coastal infrastructure plan. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. There's an alternate, well, there's a motion put by Councillor Costin up on the screen. Can we have a look at that and then I'll call for a seconder, please. Thanks, councillors. Is there a seconder for this? Well, you both, you want to toss a coin or? Yeah, right. Councillor Finnegan, thirded by Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to thank the officers for the work they've done on the community infrastructure plan and all the members of the community who've had input along the way, and particularly for the discussions that we've had over the last week, and for councillors for accepting this alternate motion. Thank you. This community infrastructure plan, integrated planning, is something that I'm very keen on. It's been part of my work for some international work for some years, and I pushed strongly for this approach when I was on the Otway Coast Committee, and I'm pleased to see it implemented. However, although the CIP includes some great proposals for traffic management and streetscape, car parking and bus parking to a lesser degree, the so-called foreshore improvements lack a community focus. And there are many other, arguably more high priority community infrastructure needs that are not covered by the community infrastructure plan. These include affordable housing in response to our declared housing crisis, and the recommendations in the 2021 tracked infrastructure assessment, which have been deemed out of scope. These include the Apollo Bay Early Years Hub, or childcare at the Apollo Bay Early Years Hub, and there's particularly the need for car parking around the community centre. So that begs the question of the relative priority of infrastructure included in the CIP and that not included in the CIP. So I've included clause 3 up here, if we can scroll back to clause 3, which is just an amendment to the council officer recommendation to make it clear that infrastructure which is included in the CIP doesn't receive any higher priority over infrastructure that is not in the CIP, and there's a great many items of infrastructure that will also emerge over time, and we should consider those equally along with what's in the CIP. In relation to the foreshore, the community's placed a high priority on new or redeveloped surf lifesaving club, one that can actually see the beach. But it seems there's no real consideration in the CIP. Similarly, communities strongly support the Victorian Blue Water Ocean Safety Skills Centre. This is not mentioned in the CIP. A Petonk pitch is a strong aspiration, or has been requested and discussed with Gore Kappa, and it's not shown in the CIP. and the direct pedestrian and visual link between the central foreshore and the harbour is needed to activate both areas, both the harbour and the foreshore, and to ensure access for all ages and all abilities. So the CIP seems to have become a bit bogged down by the different land management agencies and their different approaches. And we see fairly conservative interpretations of what I think is a flawed coastal management policy, and quite a lack of empathy to the fact that the foreshore makes up almost all the public open space available for community use. Apollo Bay's European heritage and traditional practices are explicitly tied up in the foreshore. Clause 4 here acknowledges the recent meetings between the community and GORCAPA to discuss the community's expectations along the foreshore, and these covered the skate park, the Patunk Pitch, the Point Bunbury Walk, Skinch Creek Trail, and a public open space strategy, along with the harbour plan, the recreation reserve master plan process, the difficulty in getting permits and community engagement issues. And the community members at that meeting were pleased with GORCAPA's commitment to undertake more extensive community engagement. However, we still have the community infrastructure plan to consider. The proposed clause 4B1 here, the response to GORCAPA's commitment to a trail to Skinch Creek and to Council's resolution to advocate for a safe path between Apollo Bay and Skinch Creek. In the consultation copy, this path was shown, but it's been removed, and this resolution, this part of the resolution, or my motion, asks for it to be reinstated on the plan. It can be shown as a dotted line if necessary. Clause 4B2 reinstates the foreshore wording of the consultation copy of the CIP pending further community engagement. Thanks, Chris. There's a lot in it. Clause 4C, I'm a bit confused here because I had a couple of alternate motions and we had some discussion before about how best to proceed. GORCAPA have given a commitment to some community members to retain the Patunk Pitch, and I've covered that. The skate park, the marine and coastal management policy that allows car parks and caravan parks and foreshores and sports grounds and playgrounds on coastal Crown land, but not a skate park, is a nonsense interpretation of the policy. Skate park has absolutely no negative impact on the coastal environment. And what I'm proposing is that within the text of the CIP, that Council makes a statement here of its position. Council can't require GORCAPA to do anything, but it can make a strong statement. And instead of hiding those views in the appendix, I'd like to see them up on the main plan. And also a similar approach to the foreshore trail to the harbour. It just doesn't seem right that we put something out for community consultation and then later on, someone, because of some agency's change of mind, and they've changed their mind many times here because it's included in the harbour development plan, because of a change of mind, they want to take it out, and we've proposed to take it out. We need to make a strong statement on that, so I've proposed words for that also. The Point Bunbury path, I haven't proposed anything because I've had discussions with community members who have been working with GORCAPA to resolve that issue. That's Tim Cobb and Graham Hill from the Golf Club have had some discussions, so I have left a strong statement on that out and hope that Gore Kappa will follow through on their commitments to those members of the community. So,
7.5 minutes.
So, councillors, I urge you to to vote for my alternate motion, which emphasises council's strong views on a couple of things that have been removed from the community infrastructure plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm seconding Councillor Costin's motion as I feel it's in line with what our coastal community expects of the Apollo Bay, Skeens Creek and Marengo Community Infrastructure Plan. Like my fellow councillors, I value the input of our community and I'm happy to listen to them and consider their views. However, it seems to me that Gore Kappa seems to routinely ignore the coastal community in the Colac Otway Shire. Of the 11 people currently sitting on the Gore Kappa board, only one, Terry Brax, the wife of the former Victorian Premier Steve Brax, has a tangible connection to the Colac Otway Shire by virtue of a property she owns at Wye River. There are more Melbourne-based representatives on the Gore Kappa board than those from the Colac Otway Shire. And therein lies the problem. Gore Kappa continually seek to ride roughshod over the wishes of the coastal communities of the Colac Otway Shire in particular.
Sorry, Councillor Finnegan, just need to talk about the CIP when you can, please. Well, get to it.
Whether it be holding up the construction of footpaths, seeking to place trails along areas of the foreshore which are underwater, destroy skate parks which are well loved and utilised, and don't even get us started on the saga of the Skeens Creek to Wild Dog walking trail. My position is Gore Kappa would be well placed to appoint board members from Apollo Bay and our coastal region to their board, move to an elected board to ensure, as per point 4 of Gore Kappa's statement of expectation.
CIP, please.
No worries, thank you, Mayor. I will finish up by just saying I wish I didn't have to publicly flog Gore Kappa, but based on what I've seen, I have limited faith in their capacity to act in the interests of the community unless they...
Sorry, Councillor Finnegan. You've had a bit of go. I'm trying to get you back to the CIP. If you can just wind up with that bit, and then, yeah, you've got another minute to go if you need it, but stick to the CIP, please.
The final part of this statement is, I think that unless Gore Kappa are called out and held to account for failing to engage in good faith with stakeholders, be it our local communities or the council, they're not going to get very far. And that's my opinion. Sorry, and that's why I'm supporting Councillor Costin's, seconding Councillor Costin's motion, because I feel it's more in line with what the community expects than what Gore Kappa presents.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Any other councillor? Councillor Hart?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking the community for having their input on this particular community infrastructure plan. It is an important plan. Plans such as these are needed to secure funding. Government only provides funding in response to clear plans on infrastructure such as this one. Councillor Costin's put forward a resolution that I support, that identifies some of the key deficiencies in what would otherwise may have been adopted. In particular, Councillor Costin has ensured that the skate park is in the plan. That should be supported by council. It's supported by the community. It's what the community wants. It's a sensible location, and it should never have been removed from the draft plan. Some of the other things that Councillor Costin has included in those points are the trail from the harbour and also the trail from Skeens Creek to Apollo Bay, which we supported as a standalone resolution last month. I think it is fair to say we have some experience of dealing with Gore Kappa. We've had some experience with dealing with Gore Kappa in relation to a Kennet River project, and I won't go on too much about that, I might get cut off. But we hear also from the community different experiences they're having with Gore Kappa, and there really is a familiar theme with the experiences with Gore Kappa, and it's not a positive one. So I think Councillor Costin has rightly said through this resolution that we need to represent what the community wants and speak on behalf of the community, and not just see that we have to do what we're told by Gore Kappa. The reality is, in a practical sense, Gore Kappa have no accountability to the community. Their role is independent of their responsiveness or otherwise to the public. So in such a situation, it's even more important that Council needs to stand with the community and not allow ourselves to be dictated to by Gore Kappa. The community is already aware of what they're dealing with Gore Kappa, and I think increasingly councillors are becoming aware of that too, and we've heard that from some of the comments made just a short while ago.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Any other councillor? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor Chris. I'd just like to endorse the statements that have been made so far by the other councillors in support of Graham Costin's motion. It did clarify some issues within this report that were brought to us and have been a topic of discussion amongst the council for the last few weeks. I think the foreshore area is the community's usable open space. It belongs primarily to the community, and they have been the long-term caretakers of it up until today, before Gore Kappa come along. My wife and I had the privilege again recently to come down to the bay on the weekend and found the area around the skate park itself, the playground, the whole area in good use. I don't find the skate park offensive. I think it's well suited to the area. It's actually slotted in really nicely against the dunes. And so I don't see the environmental impact of it and the problem, so I'd like to see it stay there. Walking along Nelson Street down to the harbour demonstrated very clearly to us why there's a pathway needed. That's a no-brainer. There's definitely need for that safe pathway connection. And so I'd agree with the motion that the council support the community's aspirations for all of these issues that are talked to within the motion, and that we engage positively. I prefer to engage with Gore Kappa on behalf of the community, ensure that they continue to be, or at least become, accountable. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor? Councillor Hanson.
I am awkwardly stuck in the corner here. I will support Councillor Costin's motion because I think from a very practical point of view, I think he's made some really good inclusions in this motion that's very much listening to the community. And I'd also like to thank the community for all their input and the council officers as well for the work that's been done on this community infrastructure plan. But I very much, very strongly support Councillor Costin's motion, and particularly, you know, the around the items of the skate park on the foreshore and the connectivity of the harbour to the township. And the reason being, I think the skate park, you know, does fit in beautifully. It is a well-used area, a well-used facility. I spent a couple of nights down here over the school holidays with my children and my husband and my 87-year-old mother, and you know, it's great to see all ages down here enjoying those facilities, and it would be a real shame to see it gone. I very, very strongly support that linkage from the harbour to the township because at the moment it's a space used by pedestrians, commercial fishermen, the public, recreational fisher people. It is a space that's used by a lot of people, and its access is it's not ideal, and I think we really need an all abilities access from the harbour to the township. Because, you know, yes, it's great, you know, to use the beach, and I guess there was high tide when I went down there with my mum. I guess I could have taken my shoes off and jumped into the water and walked across to the main street, but my 87-year-old mum wasn't going to do that, and I had to drag her back up the hill, dodge cars, walk across, you know, speed humps. It really made me realise that It's fine for a fit person, but it's not great for people that might be in wheelchairs, have mobility issues, and we want Apollo Bay to be a place for everybody to enjoy, because we all enjoy it now and we love it, but we want it to be, we want some of those improvements. So that's why I very strongly support Councillor Costin's motion, and I think we really need to really strongly put our position to Gore Kappa about what this community wants.
Councillor White.
Hard act to follow, all these people, but I think what I really have heard and has been demonstrated is that there is a strong consensus amongst us all 7 councillors in how we want to support Councillor Costin's motion and how important it is for this community to be heard. I think this has been a really good demonstration of a community that has come together and expressed their views and have been heard. And we have all had long discussions about this. We've gone out and looked at what we're talking about today. We all went down and had a look and heard what Kate's got to say about it. And we understand the vision that the community has for this foreshore, and we really want to strongly support that. Community engagement is really important, and working through the plan and having a look at all the work that the officers have done to put it together, to hear the submissions, to make comment on the submissions, make amendments to the plan, is a really good demonstration of how you work with community and get to where we want to go. And I think part of our role is now to advocate with the community, with Gore Kappa, to make sure that that vision is implemented and that we can support what the community want to do. Yes, I strongly support Councillor Costin's as well.
Thanks, Councillor White, and it's not usual that the Chair speaks to items, but in this case I will, and I too am very happy to support this. The community for many, many months have made it clear as to how they feel about some of these specifics, and I've been a strong advocate of their voice in relation to that, as we all are tonight. What this achieves, I'm not too sure, but I think it sends a message that council and community stand together on these issues. The actions and inactions of Gore Kappa, sometimes my personal view of found puzzling and hard to understand, and maybe this will open a pathway to more communication and a better way of working together, and I certainly will advocate for that. So thank you. Councillor Costin, I think we've all discussed it. Did you want to say something? There's no really right of reply technically. Thank you, Councillor Hanson. So I think we've all had our say. I'll put it to the vote, councillors. I think I know what that'll be. So show of hands, please. All those in favour of the motion is carried, 7-0. Thanks, councillors. We'll move on. Item 9.2, Community Assets Committee. Do we have any questions of officers? No questions? We happy to keep going, councillors? We'll keep moving through. Yep. Yeah, thanks, Chris. No questions of officers. We'll provide a recommendation with a report for councillors to consider. Any councillor? Oh, sorry. It's hard with you in the corner there, Kate. Councillor Hanson has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that we're revoking the Barwon, if the recommendation is moved, we're revoking the Barwon Downs Community Asset Committee. Can you just explain why that is and how the hall will be made? The hall is not being closed or sold or anything like that.
Does someone want to... Oh, Marlo's going to do that, are you, Marlo?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just to respond to that question, Councillor Hanson, no, I can confirm that the hall isn't being closed. Council will take over management of the hall because the Community Asset Committee is we no longer have any members operating that Community Asset Committee. There is another group, which is the Barwon Downs Community Group Incorporated. So there may be an opportunity, if you recall that Council had endorsed in March 3 different governance models while we've been reviewing this, and one option may be that we're still in discussion with the group that we actually lease, have a lease agreement with them to manage the hall in future. So we're still having discussions about that.
Any other questions? Thanks, Kate.
So if somebody in Barwon Downs wanted to use the hall, who do they contact? One that wants to use the Barwon Downs hall, don't have to be from Barwon Downs.
They would come through the Community Asset Committee email.
So can I just supplement the response there? So if Council does tonight resolve to revoke the committee, then Council officers will make sure that our webpage and probably a sign on the door at the very least will direct people where they need to go to be able to make bookings, because the hall will remain available for use. Yep.
Any other questions? Councillors, we have a recommendation in front of us. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Seconder? Councillor White, thank you. Is to be opposed? Councillor Arnott, did you wish to speak?
I think it's self-explanatory and Kate's covered it very well. Thank you for that, Councillor Hanson.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Councillor White?
Just to commend the work of the officers in working through with the communities to formalise the functions of the committees and to ensure that the communities understand what their responsibilities are. And I know it's been a lot of hard work, so I think that needs to be recognised. And we need to support what the Barwon Downs community wants, so I'm happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillors, I'll put the... sorry, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to make the observation that I appreciate what the council officers have been doing to resolve this issue, and particularly the second point of this resolution, which is establishing a community asset committee for the Warrion Public Hall community. They were previously acted on advice from council on setting up an association and a process which was very cumbersome and unnecessary, and I think we need to acknowledge that it has been a bit awkward for the people who have relied on what they were told to do some years ago, but what this motion is seeking to do is to make that right by appointing a community asset committee to that hall, as already exists to the many other halls, the ones that didn't jump in and do what they were told by council, and with the benefit of hindsight, it was proven that the Community Asset Committee is the better process.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Any other councillor? Thanks, councillors. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried 7-0. Councillors, item 9.3. The project budget adjustments and cash reserves transfers. Are there any questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
I wonder if, Mayor, we just get an explanation as to why point 3 has been added. I think it would be useful.
Yes, good idea. Thank you. CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Hart, through the Mayor. A very quick response. There are 4 tables or a series of decisions that we're presenting, or decisions we're asking of Council tonight. One of those is to ratify the closure and completion of a number of projects, and then we forgot to actually bring that into the recommendation so that Council could formalise the ratification. And that's why we've included that extra point.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillors, we have officers provide a recommendation with a report. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation? Thanks, Councillor Hart. Is there a seconder for that, please? Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, I do, Mayor. I think this is a very positive and open and transparent process that we're doing here. Essentially, when you set a budget for any project, often they come in a bit under or a bit over, and essentially here the public can see all the different projects, what they were, where money has been required for something that perhaps wasn't expected, and where projects have been completed under budget and some that have required more funding. I find this process a significant improvement on how council might have handled things in the past. I remember when quite some years ago there was a project in a budget and 2 years later it was in a subsequent budget, and I said, well, hang on a minute, we've already funded that, what happened to the money? And I couldn't get an explanation, and yet contrast this with what we're doing today, that not only can you see where the money's going, but councillors and the public get to see what projects have been completed and where money has been reallocated or saved on different projects. So I commend the officers, and I encourage the public, if you're interested in what council does with its money, have a bit of a look at this report.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Finnegan, did you wish to speak?
I'd just like to echo Councillor Hart's comments. I think it's really good that we can see where public money's going, where we need to engage in spending and the like, and I think that these reports help break it down, so basically anyone can look and see just where everything's going, rather than just seeing a giant figure at the end of the day, figuring out how much we're spending. So I think it's well done to the officers for putting this together. So
thank you. Any other councillor? Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried 7-0. Councillors, item 9.4 is for notation, and item 10.1, report from delegate from G21. Any questions of me on that? Thank you. It is for noting. Item 10.2, notice of motion, deferral of payment for offsets. Do we have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
I have got probably two questions on this, Mayor. I would like to ask, if I could, if in relation to the emission reduction projects that Colac Otway Shire has done over the years, has that had a net saving or net cost to council, or essentially to ratepayers?
Mr McNeil.
Through you, Mayor, my understanding is that the council's managed to achieve an annual cost saving of about $250,000. So that's a saving that council gets every year as a result of all the projects that council's undertaken to reduce its carbon emissions.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks for the answer to that one. The other question I have, in relation to the audit that was previously done in terms of assessing council's emissions, and there'd been some sort of estimate from the council, what was the outcome of that? Was the figure that the officers had calculated found to be materially incorrect, and which way did it go? Was the audit find that the emissions were higher or lower than what the council had originally estimated?
Mr McNeil.
Through you, Mayor, the result for 2020-21 was that council's carbon emissions was identified through its own inventory. In other words, staff assembling information about what those emissions were, was 1,775 tonnes. That was later verified through Pangolin doing an audit for council, and a lower figure was achieved of 1,519 tonnes. So the external audit that was undertaken for council resulted in a saving of 256 tonnes. So in other words, the audited figure was lower than the emissions that council's own inventory had identified.
Councillor Hart.
I think this should be the final one from me, Mayor. Has Council, from that audit, does Council have information that would allow them to perhaps better assess what the emissions figure would be when they're doing the calculation in the future? Was there something identified that wasn't quite right and that can now be dealt with, having identified that?
Through you, Mayor, the reason for the minor reduction in emissions through the external audit is that those auditors have taken into account Scope 3 emissions. I was just trying to think of the right word there. But primarily Council's offsets are aiming to achieve Scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions offsets, that is offsets for carbon emissions that Council is directly responsible for. So through the auditing process, they've identified some Scope 3 emissions through the supply chains for work that Council commissions, and therefore that results in a different figure.
Any other questions? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Hart's notice of motion proposes that we defer payment for emissions offsets. I'm just wondering how much is the amount we were proposing to pay for these offsets?
Thanks, Mr McNeil.
Through you, Mayor, the amount that Council paid for offsets from the 2020-21 financial year was about $25,500. We expect that this year, if Council was to proceed with purchasing offsets for the 21-22 financial year, it would be about $30,000 to $33,000.
Any other questions? Councillor Hart, would you like to move your motion? Yeah, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. For over 10 years, Colac Otway Shire has been measuring the emissions from its operations and undertaking emission reduction projects such as large-scale solar, lighting upgrades, installation of solar hot water, and some of those are detailed in the attachments to this resolution. I've outlined in the supporting statement how Council came to the position of paying for emission offsets and for an audit for those calculations. I think what's interesting and of note is that the audit that has been done identified that, if anything, Council perhaps had calculated too high a figure that needed to be offset. But having seen those calculations, Council can take that into account if and when they need to do a future calculation. In a sense, the audit that was done is a bit like an audit Council would do on any matter, on procurement or any other matter, identify some improvements, take account of those improvements. I actually don't think it's necessary to do an audit every year if Council was to assess its emissions, because I'm quite confident that the organisation has, if you like, learnt something that can be corrected as a result of that audit. There's been various views expressed about whether funds used for the audit and for the offsets would be better used for emission reduction projects, but I think we need to be clear: if Council just stops paying for offsets, it will not be carbon neutral across its current operations. And Council's only ever looked at paying for offsets for its emissions. There's no suggestion that it has the power or even the desire to charge anyone else. We know the key areas of operations that could be changed to reduce emissions: the vehicle fleet, gas use, especially at Blue Water Fitness Centre, and heavy plant and equipment. We've also got the information from the audit, and there's really any number of options. We could be in it. I think we need to be looking at the other side of this equation. We could be an area for projects such as landholders wanting large-scale permanent replanting of trees that could be funded from other municipalities or businesses who want to pay for offsets, as well as Council's own offsets. So one of the questions that was mentioned today, I actually see it's an economic opportunity that landholders in this shire could be a location for offsets. But unfortunately, that opportunity hasn't been investigated to date. What this resolution does, if it's supported, it stops the payments for offsets. It asks the community to be invited to comment on the issue as part of the public consultation on the environment strategy and climate action plan. So the public will, if this resolution gets through, will have every opportunity to comment on that. And then council will make a decision on the matter after the consultation on that plan, and I would expect that that would be an open council meeting. I think it's really important that we need to see that there's an opportunity here, again, an opportunity in the Colac Otway Shire municipality. There's other municipalities that want to pay for offsets, and particularly the urban ones, where farmers and other landholders could actually be earning income from these payments of offsets. And were Colac Otway to be paying for offsets for its emissions, I would have hoped and preferred that that would be locally, even if technically they're not considered as certified. But I come back to what this motion does. It allows, we stop the payment for the time being, retain the funds, and all of these issues, and I'm sure there'll be a number of different views, can be discussed as part of the process with the environment strategy and the climate action plan. And we need to not lose sight of the opportunities that come from those sorts of offsets from a revenue perspective.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I'll be supporting this motion of Councillor Hart's, and the reason I'll be doing that is because I think it really shows that council is listening to its community. I think since it was public knowledge that we purchased carbon offsets, I think there's been, quite an outcry from the community that it wasn't what the community wanted. It wasn't particularly popular, and I think it's a good idea that we put a hold on the purchase of carbon offsets until the environment strategy and climate action plan have been reviewed. But that said, I think council's pursuit of decreasing its carbon emissions is something that's quite strongly supported by the community. But it's probably the discussion that needs to be had is how we actually do that. And there's probably a lot of ways that we can do that, and the community want to have their say in that. And I also support Councillor Hart's. He discussed no need for an audit every year. I do agree I agree with that as well, because I think at the end of the day we realise that in our operations we aren't carbon neutral yet, and aren't probably close to being carbon neutral, probably not for quite a while, until we either buy carbon offsets, or we have more projects that actually decrease our carbon footprint. So I don't actually think there's a need for that to spend the money on that audit every year, because I really strongly support money being spent on actual practical projects in the community, and I think that's why we need to steer away from these things. But I am very interested in what the community has to say, and just from a personal point of view, if you're going to put aside $30,000 to $40,000 a year, or even $50,000 a year, including an audit for carbon offsets and the audit, that goes a long way to, initiatives in your own community, and even initiatives that are really popular, like this tree planting in our small towns and all our towns. And I think we have a real opportunity there around, greening our streets and cooling our streets. So I am really interested in what the outcomes are of the climate action plan, and the ideas that we get from our community.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Any other councillor? Councillor Costin.
Thanks, Mayor. I support Councillor Hart's motion. I think offsets are just a waste of money. They don't provide anything for our community. We should be spending the money on reducing our energy use, energy costs. At the moment, I'm not sure of how much we've spent on energy reduction measures, but I know that over the 10 years since we implemented the carbon neutral carbon action plan, that we have saved over $1 million So that's over $1 million that we've had available to spend on other things, and that can only get higher. I'm in two minds about whether vegetation offsets within the municipality are a good thing. I think we've moved on a little bit from in our understanding of offsets. In 2020, when the original motion for offsets was proposed, offsets were seen as a great thing, but we now know a lot more about whether they're effective or not effective, and the consensus is that particularly vegetation offsets are nowhere near as effective in combating climate change as reducing our use of fossil fuel energy. So thanks, Councillor Hart, for proposing this, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Costin. Any other councillor? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. I also, like Graham, do not think that the use of purchasing offsets is a good spend. This has been a subject of discussion amongst the council for some time now, since I've been with the council, and I thank the council for the motion and the opportunity to review this. I respect the process of consultation with the community about this, even though whilst I do have my own personal view of not to purchase external offsets. I note the work of council to date to reduce this carbon footprint and to increase the sustainability and the funds that we've saved, as Councillor Costin has said. And I note there's an opportunity here. If we were to spend this $30,000 simply on a capital loan, the interest on that would give us around about $400,000 to work with to do a substantial project. That might save us another $100,000 a year on some other inputs to this council. There's another $100,000 that we could buy another $1 million worth to do another project to save some more money. We could actually move this very, very quickly, have this council not only carbon neutral in real terms, but saving the community money and giving the community real assets that improves the sustainability right across this shire. So that's the sort of focus that I would prefer to have.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor? Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried 7-0. Councillors, I know we're nearly there, but we will be having a 5-minute break. Rightio. Sorry, we're just waiting for Councillor Costin. Righto, we'll kick it off again, everyone. Item 10.3, notice of motion, source of rate revenue. Councillor Costas, is your notice of motion? Did you briefly want to describe the purpose?
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this is just to do what we said we would do when we adopted our rating strategy for 22 to 25, I think it was. We said we would monitor the impact of changing valuations on the distribution of our rate burden. So I've been talking with council officers about this for some time, and this is a way through to looking at annual updates each year and feeding this information into the next rating strategy, which will be for the next council. But providing the information, monitoring what we're doing, and being transparent about it.
Thanks, Councillor Costin. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Costin, did you wish to move your motion? Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hart, is to be opposed? Councillor Costin.
Sorry, Mayor, I think I've said all that I proposed to say about it.
I think you did.
Thank you.
Councillor Hart?
Thanks, Mayor. I think it is important that we do have this information available, but I think when it is made available, we need to have a shared understanding of what it says. I'm quite puzzled to think that Otway only contributes 2.2% of the rate revenue, but I suspect that's a discussion of whether that includes Forest and Birregurra and which towns and what have you. So I think there needs to be a bit more clarity. I think the information should be provided, but there needs to be clarified of what's in the different categories.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that I support this motion, and I also support the comments from Councillor Hart that I think it's a really good idea to be, explicitly clear of the breakup of rate distribution. I'm not going to use the word rate burden because the term burden does get bandied around a bit. And the reason I want to raise it is that burden, can mean different things to different people, and just because somebody pays $30,000 a year in rates doesn't mean that they have a greater rate burden than someone who might only pay like $500 a year on, in rates if the person paying $500 a year in rates has a very low income. So I just want to sort of make that clarification around the word burden. What we're really getting here is a divvy up of the rate distribution.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor White.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say I think it's really important to have good, accurate information, but to also say that we need to be careful how the information is used, and that it's only one piece of a very complex puzzle about rates and how we spend them and where expenditure is used. And that, you know, we are a region, we're not separate entities, and we need to understand how we work as a region. So I think we just need to also be cautious about how we use the information and understand that it is only one part of a very complex puzzle that we have, that is our rates. And I agree with Kate's talking about a burden. It's a loaded word, and I think we need to be careful how that's used.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Arnott.
Just to endorse all of the comments made to date and to support the motion, and to head on that a bit about the clarity. This will include farming, residential, commercial, industrial, and all of those are rated differently depending on the rates. Like commercial, I think it's 160% of the base, residential, Colac 100%, other places 80%, farmers different. So, and then the makeup within these will be part of all of those sorts of different categories. So it's only one part of a really big picture, but I think it does help add clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks, councillors. I'll put the motion to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried 7-0. Councillors, item 10.4, notice of motion, Maringo Pillar Beacon. Councillor Costin, this is yours. Did you want to briefly describe the purpose?
I've proposed a small rewording to this notice of motion in point 2, which is just to say include significant heritage features and heritage buildings not currently included in the plan. I think the purpose of it is self-explanatory. It's to make a public commitment, a council to make a public commitment to reinforce what our officers have been telling the community, but just to show that council backs that position also.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Just wondering, just clarifying, as I understand it, the sort of cost to the council of what the cost to the council of reinstating the beacon would be. If we could sort of just get some clarification on that for the public.
Mr. Chasemore, thank you.
Costs are probably unknown at this point around getting the required approvals for a MACA and the supporting documentation, so unknown at this stage.
Any other questions? Thank you. Councillor Costin, did you wish to move your motion?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hart, is to be opposed? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. This beacon was located out the other side of Maringo. It's on coastal Crown land. It was built in 1858 following a couple of shipwrecks on the Henty Reefs. It's been a landmark for some time. It was visible from a lot of the residential areas within Maringo, and it was located right beside the Great Ocean Walk, and was a popular spot to stop and just collect yourselves before you headed off on the Great Ocean Walk proper into the wilderness. We inadvertently removed it without consulting the community, and I think we need to accept that we made a mistake and it needs to be reinstated. But unfortunately, it's become, as time's passed, it's become harder and harder to reinstate due to formation of Gore Kappa and the new marine and coastal management policies. So much in the same way as the Skinns Creek Trail, the longer you leave it, the harder it is to actually do something. I'm not proposing any particular timeframes there. I'm asking officers just to let the community know of what is proposed, the obstacles in the way, and reinforce the commitment that Council is proposing to proceed with its reinstatement. The second part is just to emphasise that heritage features, European heritage features such as the beacon, were not included in Council's 2003 heritage plan, and that plan will be updated sometime in the future. And point 2 just makes the point that when we do update that heritage plan, we will include significant heritage features other than buildings, and also any buildings that weren't included in that 2003 plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think in supporting this resolution, I think we need to be very clear what the resolution is asking for, and I do think it is a legitimate and important issue that Councillor Costin has brought to us in terms of the removal of the beacon. But what this resolution, if it's adopted, is calling for is Council to advise what proposed actions are and time frames, and my expectation would be that that discussion would include what's occurred to date and if there are any complications. And I think we all know that as soon as GORCAP is involved, life does get a bit complicated. So teasing that information out. And the other thing it's asking is to update in relation to the Colac Otway Heritage Plan. My expectations again would be what the timeline might be. I would imagine that review happens from time to time anyway, and how it might link in with this resolution. So in supporting this resolution, I think we need to be clear that we're requesting some updates on these matters in the first instance. And while I take the point of the question that was asked by Councillor Finnegan and the answer, which was what's the cost, we don't know, that my expectation would be that if this resolution's passed, that's the sort of thing that would be teased out in discussing where this issue is at and where it goes from here. This doesn't say that we build the beacon tomorrow and or what have you and do that. It's calling for more information, and on that basis, I'm more than happy to support the particular resolution.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Any other councillor? Councillor Finnegan.
I would like to state my support for this notice of motion. I think it's, I think hopefully we can get to a position whereby we are able to reinstate the beacon, and it's not too burdensome on either the council and its non-finances or anything of that ilk. And I think it's very important that we do update our heritage plan to see if there aren't any buildings or structures that we have missed. So I'll be supporting this notice of motion.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried 7-0. Councillors, that concludes the meeting for today. Thank you for the way you work together. Thank you, staff, for setting up. Thank you, members of the public, for coming. That concludes the meeting for today. Councillors just need to stay back and talk to the principal for a minute, if you can give us a